March 14th, 1985. Queens, New York. The dinner table is still set. A glass of red wine, half finished, a plate of lamb, barely touched. The television still running in the next room. Paul Castellano did not leave in a hurry. He left the way powerful men always leave, expecting to return. He didn't. But this story is not about Paul Castellano. It's about the man who was never at the table. The man whose name never appeared on indictments. The man the FBI surveilled for 11 years, wiretapped, photographed, and ultimately could not touch. His name was Carlo Gambino. He died in his bed, in his own home, of natural causes, in 1976. The most powerful organized crime figure in post-war American history was never convicted of a single serious felony, never imprisoned for his empire, never broken on the witness stand. The FBI called him the boss of bosses. He called himself a simple importer. The question isn't how he built it. The question is how he kept it for 3 decades while every man around him fell. The answer reveals something deeply unsettling about the nature of power in America, about the line between legitimate authority and criminal enterprise, about who the law is actually designed to catch. September 1st, 1902, Palermo, Sicily. Carlo Gambino was not born into power. He was born into its shadow. Western Sicily in the early 20th century was not a place. It was a condition. Poverty enforced by landowners. Justice administered by men with no official title. The state was distant. The casca was immediate. He learned early what most men never understand, that authority is not granted. It is constructed, quietly, brick by brick. He arrived in America in 1921, illegally, through the port of Norfolk. No fanfare, no record. Exactly how he intended. He did not rise through violence. That was his genius. While other men drew attention with brazen hits and public displays of dominance, Gambino moved differently. He observed. He waited. He made himself useful to those above him without ever appearing ambitious to those beside him. Through the 1930s, he aligned with the Mangano family, not because they were the strongest, but because they were stable. Stability, he understood, was the precondition for everything else. He survived Prohibition. He survived the Castellamarese War. He survived the purge of the old Mustache Petes. Every upheaval that destroyed other men simply repositioned him. By 1951, Vincent Mangano disappeared. His brother Philip was found dead. Gambino was questioned, then promoted. Patience in his world was not a virtue. It was a weapon, and he wielded it with surgical precision. October 25th, 1957. The Park Sheraton Hotel, Manhattan. Albert Anastasia sat in a barber's chair, eyes closed, hot towel across his face. 2 men walked in. They left. He didn't. The murder of Albert Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner, the most feared man in American organized crime, was not an act of impulse. It was a corporate decision, carefully negotiated, precisely timed. Gambino had authorized it. Anastasia had become unstable, selling membership into the commission, threatening allied families. His ambition had outgrown his usefulness. Gambino did not pull the trigger. He never did. He simply removed an obstacle, then stepped into the vacancy Anastasia left behind. Within months, the Gambino family was the most powerful organized crime organization in the United States. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no charges. Power at the street level is loud. Power at the political level is silent. Gambino understood the distinction completely. Through the late 1950s and into the 1960s, his organization quietly embedded itself into the infrastructure of New York. Construction contracts, garment district unions, longshoremen. The concrete that built the city in every sense passed through hands he controlled. But labor and real estate were only the visible layer. Beneath it ran something more durable. Relationships. Carefully cultivated connections to city officials, judges, and law enforcement figures who found it professionally convenient to look elsewhere. The FBI was not oblivious. J. Edgar Hoover had spent years publicly denying the existence of a national crime syndicate. Whether that denial was ignorance or arrangement remains, to this day, a subject of serious historical debate. What is documented is that Gambino operated with extraordinary freedom during precisely those years. When Robert Kennedy finally pressured the Bureau into action in the early 1960s, Gambino had already built his walls too high to scale quickly. The FBI's greatest frustration was not finding evidence. It was finding men willing to speak about it. Gambino had constructed something rarer than loyalty. He had constructed dependency. Every man beneath him needed him more than he needed any single one of them. That asymmetry was deliberate, engineered over decades. He compartmentalized ruthlessly. Captains knew their own operations. Nothing more. No single arrest could unravel the whole architecture because no single man possessed the complete blueprint. He also understood something the Bureau consistently underestimated, that silence in his world was not cultural stubbornness. It was rational calculation. Informants did not retire. They disappeared. When the FBI finally placed microphones inside his social club on Mulberry Street, they heard card games, complaints about weather, discussions of food. Nothing prosecutable, nothing actionable. A man who never spoke carelessly could never be quoted dangerously. To understand Gambino's power, you must understand what he authorized without ever documenting. The 1971 murder of Joseph Colombo illustrated it cleanly. Colombo had committed an unforgivable sin, visibility. He had founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League, staged public demonstrations outside FBI headquarters, and deliberately inserted organized crime into the national conversation. He had made the invisible visible. Gambino did not approve. Within months, Colombo was shot in the head at his own rally. He survived, but spent the remaining 7 years of his life in a vegetative state. No charges were ever brought connecting Gambino to the order. The message, however, was received perfectly by every man inside every family across the commission. Ambition was permitted. Exposure was not. October 15, 1976. Massapequa, New York. Carlo Gambino died of a heart attack in his own home, surrounded by family, watching his favorite baseball team on television. No handcuffs, no courtroom, no plea agreement. The FBI had surveilled him for over 2 decades. They had wiretapped his conversations, photographed his meetings, tracked his movements across 2 boroughs. They had built files thick enough to fill cabinets. They had never built a case strong enough to finish him. What followed his death confirmed everything his life had demonstrated. The empire he left behind fractured almost immediately. Paul Castellano, his chosen successor, lacked Gambino's discipline and instinct for invisibility. By 1985, Castellano was murdered outside Sparks Steakhouse, authorized by John Gotti, a man who represented everything Gambino had spent his life avoiding. Loud, visible, vulnerable, Gotti was convicted in 1992, died in prison in 2002. Gambino died in bed. The law by design pursues what it can see. Carlo Gambino understood this before most prosecutors were born. He built an empire not by defying the system, but by understanding its fundamental limitation. It could only punish evidence. And evidence required witnesses. And witnesses required courage that fear methodically extinguished. He was never the most violent man in the room. He was simply the most invisible. And in America, in any society where power flows through institutions built by imperfect men, invisibility, wielded with patience and intelligence, remains the most durable form of authority ever constructed. The FBI never caught the real Godfather, because the real Godfather never gave them anything to catch.